Media is in the midst of wholesale change. Shows like the Colbert Late Show is just a dinosaur, a figment of the past, something that should have been jettisoned long, long ago. Not just because it's criminally unfunny, and so is the man, but because it didn't make sense anymore. There's no audience for it. Nobody's watching, despite the industry's best ratings in that particular genre. It's losing $40 to $50 million a year. That's unsustainable in an industry that's on the verge of, well, daily collapse in various ways. Not quite literally, but figuratively anyway. So when you start to see stories coming out about all of the things that are being exposed, including the particular bias in terms of guests and points of view being aired on any of these, well, you start to understand why they may have divided more than half the country and half the audience. They've divided off from reality, and that's something that we need to address. So, in the interest of business and media, I say we talk about it. Here we go. Now, before we get started, quick reminder, YouTube is changing its variables on what it measures as a view, or what it counts towards something that'll help creators. So be certain that you're still subscribed to this channel so you don't miss any kind of valuable communication, such as a notification. Turn on all notifications and you won't miss a moment of, well, entertainment or information, or a combination of both, like this particular video. We've got a lot to talk about, and we've got it from some really reputable sources, including Time Magazine, but we're going to start with our friends over at That Park Place. And with that, we have this article, Exposed. Study shows Colbert Late Show as a one-sided liberal love fest that got the boot. Now, I'm not saying that. Marvin Montanaro over there at That Park Place is saying that, but I'm not sure that what he says is wrong, based on a study that's pretty clear and delineates what's actually been going on in late night across the board, not just for Colbert. In a damning indictment of mainstream media bias, a new study lays bare the extreme left-wing slant of The Tonight Show with Stephen Colbert, revealing that the program hosted a staggering 176 liberal guests compared to just one conservative since 2022. That's an awful lot of slant, if you ask me. This lopsided guest list, coupled with a plummeting ratings and Democratic voter approval hitting a 35-year rock bottom low, demonstrates why CBS pulled the plug on what had devolved into what many are calling little more than a corporate-funded therapy session for progressives. And while that's some clever verbiage, I would say it was just not funny and not interesting and very one-sided, and that's even less interesting. So instead of going with suspicions, a study was conducted to, well, pretty much prove in reality that what's happening in these particular shows is pure propaganda. America proved that it's, done tuning in for any of these programs because, not just because it's not funny, but because it doesn't give any room for a real approach. Not even just in humor, but in an actual caring look at subject matter. Something that these shows used to pride themselves on, and you can actually hear about from someone as important as Jay Leno, who recently went about talking about the obvious divide that has been created in late night and, well, in the audience itself. So it looks like Newsbusters paints a picture of blatant partisanship, which I think anybody could have guessed, starting all the way from 2022 onward. Colbert's couch was a revolving door for left-leaning politicians, journalists, and celebrities. I don't know that there are many celebrities that can outwardly be conservative, because they will be immediately removed from their celebrity culture. We're talking 14 Democratic heavyweights like Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, who I promise you is not funny, Senator Elizabeth Fakahontas Warren, Senator Bernie, I promise you I am a communist, Sanders, with my millions of dollars, and Senator Cory Booker, who is basically just discount Obama, in my opinion. Of course, even hosted Kamala Harris herself during the 2024 election in a pretty naked bid to get her some positive pub, and in a way that maybe she couldn't embarrass herself, since she laughs like a hyena quite constantly. You add in the 29 liberal figures, such as PMSNBC's Chris Hayes, HBO's John Oliver, and New York Times columnist Ezra Klein, and you've got a recipe for echo chamber monotony. And the way that was worded was brilliant. Well done, Marvin. The sole conservative, and we say that with chuckles, mind you, former Rep. Liz Cheney, supposedly a Republican from Wyoming, who made it her life's mission to destroy the reputation of rhinos everywhere and promptly lose her seat as well. And the bias didn't let up. In 2025, in the first 6 months, Colbert booked 43 left-leaning political guests and basically just covered partisan, political, progressive ideas and candidates. The scope of the study obviously exposed a systematic bias in late-night television across the board. Since 2022 alone, shows like those late-night shows hosted by Jimmy Kimmel, Seth Meyers, Jimmy Fallon, and The Daily Show's Jon Stewart, with a crew of people that are unqualified to talk to other humans, collectively featured 511 liberal or Democratic guests against a paltry 14 conservatives and Republicans in total. In early 2025, The Daily Show led with 32 left-leaning guests, followed by Meyers 16, Kimmel 10, and Fallon 5. The only conservative blip was policy expert Kren Cass on The Daily Show discussing the Trump-era tariffs, which is a rare moment of actual discourse and, to be fair, some honesty when it comes to the very successful tariffs that we've seen, especially recently. As a result of this study and all the recent hubbub, you have people like Steve Bannon out there trying to, well, call out the FCC for not conducting investigations into this kind of treatment, especially on networks that are also supposed to give you news and information and not just regular propaganda updates from, well, the party elite of one party. The substantial losses over the years for the Colbert's Late Show could be considered a contribution in kind to the tune of over $500 million, which would be a no-no indeed. But honestly, that's not where we even pause the laugh button. In fact, we can ramp up the laughs because it turns out that there aren't that many people who actually legitimately support Colbert. I mean, not just in his studio audience or even his actual audience according to ratings, but also on the street during a recent, well, rally. That's right, the Stephen Colbert support rally in New York City turns into a comedy of errors with just 20 protesters showing up to defend the late-night king. First and foremost, what kind of person goes out at, well, late afternoon to support a comedy program that is supposedly going to be a nighttime show that doesn't seem to have any actual support in terms of money, let alone eyeballs? But according to Marvin, in a twist that even Stephen Colbert might appreciate for its ironic punchline, a rally organized to support the embattled late-night host, he's not embattled, he's just going to be out of a job here, outside the CBS Broadcast Center in Manhattan drew a whopping crowd of about 20 people. The We're With Colbert gathering held on Sunday, July 27th, was intended as a nationwide call for integrity, amid claims that Colbert's show cancellation was motivated politically. Well, it absolutely wasn't. It was sanity, perhaps, that motivated his firing, but it's not happening fast enough, and we have an article that we'll get to in just a moment that, well, is talking about that. But the backstory here, Colbert's cancellation sparks conspiracy theories, is terribly accurate. You have a lot of people thinking it was politically motivated, and if you look at the books, it wasn't. It was financially motivated. You can have the best ratings in the world, you can have a brand, you can be the number one thing on the Tiffany network, but if you don't actually make money, does anybody who cares about the business and, well, the network as an overall performer not abdicate their responsibility if they allow a $50 million loss to continue? There must be a reason that after 33 years, they're going to be canceling the entire show, not just the man. Well, of course, the reasoning is it costs money and the network isn't actually a charity, believe it or not. Adding fuel to the fire is the timing, because CBS's parent company, Paramount Global, recently finalized an $8.4 billion merger with Skydance Media, which we'd been waiting a long time for. It required federal approval, and some see this as evidence of bowing to political pressures from Trump. Organizer Matt, nicknamed Slim, who declined to give his name, lamented that our country is not perfect, never has been, but we've always had First Amendment. He went on to claim that Trump is trying to take that from us. I don't think so. I seem to remember a particular administration weighing heavily on social media companies to take our free speech away over a period of time where a lot of corrupt actions were being foisted upon us and our language was being monitored and even censored. Some people had actions taken against them as drastically as removing their freedom of speech on social media platforms altogether. Not to mention some people even being threatened with debanking. But it turns out that you can have all the signs, slogans, and attendees that you want. But if you really don't seem to make an impact, does anybody really care? In the case of this particular activity, the answer would be no. But here's another irony that we probably should take a look at. Colbert seems to be trying to move his way out the door faster, or at least that's how it can appear. Time magazine has gone as far as to claim that Colbert is practically daring CBS to shut him down early. And you know what? I agree. I think it's a pretty easy decision at this point to take all of the things that he's saying as something detrimental to not just Paramount, but to the show itself. A show that does have a 33-year history. And should it be erased early? Maybe, but perhaps they can find a temporary host to take over the last few months of service. It wouldn't take more than 10 people to make this thing run, because as we pointed out a few times during this video, it's not funny. So you could put a bunch of speechwriters in here and it would probably be much better. Colbert reacted for his late show on Monday, saying over the weekend it's sunk in that they're killing off our show. Well, yeah, I mean, you're the one that announced it. He reflected at the top of that particular program following a tempest of outrage over CBS' suspiciously timed cancellation of the program that had only gained strength over the weekend. Not much. We just talked about the terrible reception of the crusade that was outside on the street on Sunday afternoon. Continuing, Colbert said, "But they made one mistake. They left me alive." The audience responded with chants of Steven, not prompted in any way, I'm sure, which in retrospect was the first clue that the host's taunt was not entirely a joke. Well, of course not, and I didn't think they were going to harm the man. They just want to remove him from their airways where he cost them too much money. If there were a way out from underneath his contract that Colbert wasn't literally handing them, I'm sure they would have gotten rid of the show much sooner. Colbert, however, right now may be giving them the ammunition from which to extract him from his contract. What's terribly funny to me is that since then, Colbert has been ripping into Donald Trump with renewed relish. Not that it is his fault that he's leaving. It is kind of amusing that Trump laughed at him on the way out the door. But he's flaying CBS, the parent company that he works for. So by doubling down on attacking his most powerful enemy, Paramount, at a time when network execs are facing such intense scrutiny for what many believe are politically motivated firing, he isn't just making the most of the 10 months he has left. He's essentially daring his bosses to kill the show sooner. Well, I would be in favor of that. You could replace it with reruns. There are plenty of great former CBS shows that could return to a wonderful year of refreshed interest. I'm sure many people would be happy with returns of certain programs. Supposedly on Monday, he dedicated his entire monologue to Trump, which I wouldn't think would hurt Trump. He's been going after Trump since before the man was reelected, so it didn't seem to be very effective back then. I doubt it'll be more effective now. Suffice it to say, he didn't stop there and went on to heap praise on the South Park premiere and other things around AI. The writer of this article, Judy Berman, takes some account of what kind of risk that this truly is for Colbert. When you consider how litigious Trump has been with regard to practices that legal precedent supports as protected speech, of which satire and commentary are two, Colbert's stand is a risky one. But whether you think this response to the Late Show's cancellation is brave or foolish, you can't deny that he's playing his cards perfectly against Paramount and CBS. Well, it's perfect if you want to not have a job anymore. If the powers that be pull him off the air before May 2026, he'll have all but proven their decision to dump him was about more than the cost of making his show. And if they resign themselves to letting him say whatever he wants for the next 10 months, well then, he'll get to say whatever he wants for the next 10 months. I can't imagine either option making his bosses jump for joy, and I can't imagine them allowing it either. I have a feeling that in the very near future, Colbert will find himself on the end of several lawsuits, not just from a potential Trump litigation option, but from his very own masters, not to mention the fact that the production company that actually produces this piece of garbage with this piece of human filth speaking may find themselves on the end of some very undesirable lawsuits as well. And with that, I'm done with this one, but it's audience participation time, so let me know your thoughts down in the comments section below. Is Colbert actually trying to get himself fired? Or is he daring them to fire him to get a bigger payday? Or possibly is he trying to prove a rhetorical point? Or is he just that stupid? All of those options are available for you, as well as any you can think of for yourself. Let me know those thoughts in the comments section down below. As always, be sure to take care of yourself, take care of others, and until next time, see ya! But not watching The Late Show.